Hey folks, this is day one of our writing unit, our essay writing unit. There we go. And today we're going to focus on thesis statements. We've talked about them a little bit before in this class, but today we're going to take a much more in-depth look at thesis statements. So I'm going to be embedding this video on the next slide, but we're also going to go over to Canvas and look at our actual assignment. So on Canvas, it should say essays are like meals, thesis statements are like menus. So we're comparing a thesis statement to a menu. So let's open this copy of Google Slides and I'll zoom in so we can see it and I'll talk through it so we understand this assignment and lesson. So as it's loading, you can watch me wait for the Google Slides to load. There we go. And now I'm going to go to View. I'm going to zoom, and I'm going to pick 100%. That makes it big enough so I can see it. All right, so there's a place for you to put your name. Here is our lesson objective. It says, I can describe the purpose and traits of a successful thesis statement. So by the time you've completed this lesson and you've filled out this Google slide on your own, this one and then the second one, you should be able to understand the purpose of a thesis statement so well that you'll be able to describe the purpose, and then you should also be able to describe the traits of what a good one is. Okay, so we're comparing thesis statements to menus. So I'm going to read this to us. It says, why are English teachers so picky about thesis statements? Why do we care about how it's worded, where it belongs in a paragraph, how formally written it is, or whether or not you even have one? A thesis statement, notice that's bold and underlined. A thesis statement is a single statement that is the focus of the entire writing piece. It is the main claim that we must prove, persuasive, or fact that we must explain, informative. So if you're using persuasive writing or informative writing, you need to have a thesis statement. Okay, so why? Why do we need a thesis statement? We've got 4 scenarios to look through. The first one says, imagine that you are a reader. You've been hooked by the opening line. You've read the intro, and you can tell what the topic is, but you're still wondering, where exactly is this going? All right, now look at this one. Imagine you're a teacher. You have to evaluate or judge whether or not your student can prove a thesis, but to do that, you have to be able to find the thesis without a doubt. Notice find is in all caps. All right, let's look at this one. Imagine that you're sitting in an audience and the speaker keeps rambling about a topic. Won't you eventually want the speech to get to the point? Last one, imagine that you are reading an article. If you can find out early what the piece is really about, won't that help you decide whether or not to keep reading? So let's look at this bold all caps statement here that's separated out by some lines. It says, thesis statements give the entire essay purpose. Without one, the essay doesn't make a clear point. So basically, if your essay does not have a thesis statement, it's kind of pointless. So it's really, really important that we start with our thesis statement because it's going to give us the direction that our essay is going to take. All right, so let's look at some other comparisons that thesis statements can do. So think about how these analogies or comparisons could make sense and how do you think a thesis statement could be like these things in this list? So as you're completing the assignment, you're going to actually type a response where it says type a response here. If you double click, you can delete that text and then type your own response. Make sure that you don't accidentally delete the whole text box because if you do, you'll have to add a text box back in. Okay, so think about how a conductor, meaning like a musical conductor of a band, a choir, orchestra, whatever, how could they be like a thesis statement? Think about a spine. This says of a human body, but I think that could go for any creature with a spine, any vertebrate animal. So how could a spine function like a thesis statement? This one says a map or even a GPS. So like how could a map or a GPS, your Apple Maps on your phone or whatever, how could that function as a thesis statement? Or compare, a shocking news headline or dramatic title, maybe a clickbait title on social media. How could that be like a thesis statement? So remember, think back up here. Thesis statements give the entire essay purpose. Without one, the essay doesn't make a clear point. And then down here, you're going to think of one more thing that you could compare a thesis statement to. So you're going to do it like the boxes. So you're going to put whatever the thing is that you're going to compare your thesis statement to. And then right here, you're going to do what you've done already in these boxes. You're going to say how that thing that you picked could be like a thesis statement. Okay, I want you to pause this video and give this a shot. Welcome back. I hope you were able to get that done pretty easily. Now we're going to take a look at the rules for thesis statements. There are rules. Okay, so rule number 1, what is a thesis statement? It is a single sentence. Has to be one sentence. Either a fact, which that's going to go in an informative essay, or an opinion, that's going to go in an argumentative essay. Where? The thesis statement always goes at the last sentence in the introduction paragraph. The teacher who made this lesson has a disclaimer saying that some teachers are fine with putting a thesis statement somewhere else. For the purpose of our class for freshman English, it's always going to be the last sentence of your introduction. The last rule is that the thesis statement needs to be formally written. It's based on the genre, so whether you're doing informative or persuasive. So if you're writing informatively, your fact that is in your thesis needs to be stated objectively with careful, neutral, factual tone. If you're using persuasive as your genre, your opinion is confidently stated. No wimpy I think or I believe statements. Make sure that your thesis statement is confident or else nobody's going to take you seriously. So that's our rules for thesis statements. Let's go over to the second slide. Scroll back up to the top. Okay, thesis statements are like menus. How exactly do you prove a thesis? In a way, thesis statements are like menus, a promise of what is to come. So if you're at a restaurant, you're flipping through the menu, you can see the food items, you can see pictures sometimes. So that's giving you an idea of what you're going to order, what you would like, and what you're going to get. It says, however, readers and eaters still need the meal itself, right? Like a menu is not your actual food. You can't eat the menu. I mean, I guess you could, but it's not going to work very well. A promise isn't enough. The chef or writer has to deliver. That's in all caps for a reason. Has to deliver. Give us our money's worth or our time's worth. Make us satisfied and make us want to either keep reading or come back for more. Okay, so here's how it works. We're going to compare a restaurant meal over to an essay. So we're going to be reading back and forth. Over here in restaurant meals, over here in essays, and sometimes some articles. Okay, so in restaurant meals, the menu makes a promise about a specific meal, the ingredients in the overall meal. In essays and some articles, comparing, the thesis statement is a snapshot or a promise of the overall argument to come. All right, down here we've got free samples are sometimes given to persuade the buyer to purchase a meal or a product. The introduction is being compared to free samples, previews the topic, the thesis, the context, and sometimes the reasons why. Over here, we've got each course of the meal, so like appetizers, salads and soups, entrees, whatever, is served. So that's going to be the body paragraphs. The body paragraphs each prove a supporting point of the thesis overall. Over here, we have waiters take away old plates, refill cups, and bring each new set of food. Over here, we've got transitions, connect the sentences within, that's in all caps for a reason, paragraphs as well as across, also in all caps, the paragraphs themselves. And then finally, we've got dessert is served and the overall meal is complete. Diners feel that the promise has been fulfilled. So over here, that compares to the conclusion paragraph, paraphrases the thesis and the biggest supporting points, which are probably going to be the topic sentences of your body paragraphs, to review and summarize. So what does a good thesis statement look like? What's a good one? All right, we're going to look at this chart of some not good ones and then some that are better and then why. Okay, so this first one that's not so great says tornadoes are dangerous. They cause more monetary damage to communities than any other type of weather. It's not great. But here's a better version of the same thing. This one says tornadoes are dangerous because they cause more monetary damage to communities than any other type of weather. So why is the second one better? It's just one sentence. Remember, one of the rules for thesis statements is they can only be one sentence. All right, here's another one that's not so great. I think that we should get to use our cell phones in class because they help with safety, studying, and communication. That one doesn't sound very confident, I think. Not very confident. Let's take a look at the second one. Students should be allowed to use cell phones in class because they help with safety, studying, and communication. So they got rid of that personal pronoun. Here's a list of some personal pronouns if you don't know what that is. But it just also sounds more confident. They just say it instead of being like, I think. They just said it instead of having that I think. Here's one. It's short and sweet, but it's not great. Country music is awesome. Okay. What? They're not giving us much to go on there. So here's a better one. Country music is a popular genre because of its instruments, its relatable topics, and its American heritage. So this one is better because it's more specific, meaning that it previews the reasons why they are in favor of country music. Also, this one is much more formal. Awesome is not a very formal word. That's a word that you would use more in conversation, not so much in an essay for class. All right, last one. Damage is done to football players' brains every year. That is a good statement, but it's not a thesis. It's not. Here's a better version. Football is America's most dangerous sport due to the increase in concussions and long-term damage. So the second version is better because the language is cleaner. Over here, that's actually passive voice. We've not talked about that yet in this class, but passive voice in English class is a no-go. Also, it makes a claim. They have an opinion, and they're saying, this is my opinion. So you can take their idea that they're saying, and you can trust that they're going to use some research, and they're going to back up their claim that they've made here in their thesis statement as you read the rest of their essay. So what you're going to do now on this page is you are going to type your own thesis statement about Animal Farm in this box. You also need to be keeping track of your writing throughout this week and next week on something separate, maybe like a Google Doc or just a piece of paper, whatever works best for you. So that way, when it's time to actually put all of our stuff together and write a rough draft, you don't have to go back through all these little Google slides to go find all your stuff. But as you're thinking about your thesis, you want to make sure it's one sentence. You want to make sure it's clearly stating the main opinion. Ours is analysis, so you're going to be doing some persuasive. So it's going to be your opinion. Make sure it's previewing the reasons why your opinion is right. And also make sure it's nice and formal, right? Like you're writing for school, not like you're talking to your friends. Keep it nice and formal. So let's go look at some ideas for what you could write about. Okay, so remember, we are writing our essays over Animal Farm. Here's some ideas. You're welcome to write about something different than these if you have another idea that you thought of as we were reading the book. But if you need some help coming up with some ideas, you could use one of these. So you could write a thesis statement on the topic of how a particular character, item, or place or event, so pick one, in the book represents something from current events. We did a whole activity where we compared it to the history of what George Orwell was talking about. So maybe think of something that's happening right now in current events and how that item or whatever you've picked could represent that. Next one, actually the next two, they kind of go together, but they're the opposites. You could say how George Orwell is actually pro-communism, or you could turn it around and you could say he was actually anti-communism. You could pick one of those. You could talk about how the pigs rewrote the history of what actually happened on Animal Farm. So, things would happen, and then the pigs would be like, no, this didn't happen, or actually it happened this way. Or they would just straight up change the rules that were painted on the wall. So you could write about how the pigs rewrote history. You could say that Napoleon felt threatened by Boxer, and then explain in your essay how he felt threatened. You could say how, whichever animal or human you'd like to pick, represents George Orwell's actual opinion on what happened during the Russian Revolution. So those are just some ideas. You do not have to pick one of those. You are welcome to come up with your own idea as well, but that's just a little help if you need it to come up with a topic that you would like to come up with your opinion on as you craft your thesis statement. So you are free to work now. I'm going to let you go. Please email me through Canvas or through your school email if you are virtual and need help, or if you are traditional and are sitting in the classroom, please raise your hand and ask, because if you don't ask, no matter whether you're virtual or traditional, if you don't ask, I don't know that you need help. I cannot read your mind. So please make sure that you ask for help if you need it. But other than that, your job for the rest of class is to craft a thesis statement and turn in those Google Slides. Thanks for watching. Bye.